Dhanavat Pranam. Namaste. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Canto 1 Creation, Chapter 9, texts 6 through 7. We're continuing the purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Asita. There was a king of the same name, but herein the Asita mentioned is the Asita Devala Rishi, a great powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 1,500,000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Maharaj Janamejai. He was also present during the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhisthira, along with great rishis. He also gave Maharaj Yudhisthira instructions while he was on the Agya hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan, one of the sons of Gautama Muni, and the father of the great sage Chandakusika. He was one of the members of parliament of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Atri. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son he can have it. These sons are known as Manasaputras. Out of the 7 Manasaputras of Brahmaji, and out of the 7 great Brahmana sages, Atri was one, and his family, the great Prakshetas, were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons, who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife's name is Anasuya, and he helped Maharaj Parikshit in his great sacrifices. Kosika, one of the permanent rishi members in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhisthira. He sometimes met Lord Kṛṣṇa. There are several other sages of the same name. Sudarshana. This wheel is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Kṛṣṇa, as his personal weapon. It is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastras or similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agni-Dev, the fire god, presented this weapon to Lord Sri Krishna, but factually this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agni-Dev presented this weapon to Krishna, in the same way that Rukmini was given Maharaj Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Adi Parva of Mahabharata. Lord Sri Krishna used this weapon to kill Sishupal, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Salva by this weapon, and sometimes he wanted his friend Arjun to use it to kill his enemies, in Mahabharata Virata Parva 56.3. Text 8. Anye Chamunaya Brahman Brahmaratadayomala Sishar Upeta Ajagmu Kasyapangira. And many others, like Shukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kasyapa and Angirasa and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami Brahmarata is the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Shukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of Mahabharata in the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas, and he recited Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus he was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sabha Parva 4.11, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhisthira and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom, the difference between fruit of work and empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the four ashrams, namely the student life, householder's life, retired life, and the renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing Him face to face, the bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the five elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naradaji. Descriptions of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata 332. At last he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Araneya, Arunisutta, Vyashaki, Vyasatmaja. Kasyapa is one of the Prajapatis, the son of Marichi, and one of the sons-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kasta, Arista, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodhavasa, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage, Kasyapa, was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parasurama, and later on he asked Parasurama to go out of the world. His other name is Aristanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Angirasa is the son of Maharishi Angira and is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Sukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadvaja Muni. He begot 6 sons like the fire god by his wife Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hag on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hag does not wish to part with his earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. Text 9. Tansame tan mahabhagan upalabhya vasutama pujamasa dharmogyo deshakala vibhagavit. Bhīṣmadeva, who was the best amongst the 8 Vashus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly well all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of time and place. Bhīṣmadeva was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically, because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words, and he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Lord Sri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhīṣmadeva, and since Bhīṣmadeva knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. Purport: the Lord's omnipotence is displayed by his simultaneous presence in every place. He is present always in his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, and still he is present in everyone's heart, and even within every invisible atom. When he manifests his eternal transcendental form in the material world, he does so by his internal potency. The external potency, or the material energy, has nothing to do with his eternal form. All these truths were known to Sri Bhīṣmadeva, who worshipped him accordingly. Text 11. Pandhu putran upasinan prashraya prema sangatan abhyachakshanuragrashar andhibhutena chakshusha. Translation. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhīṣmadeva congratulated them with feeling. They were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Purport: when Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of elderly members of the royal family, specifically by Bhīṣmadeva. Later on, when the Pandavas were grown up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company. And Bhīṣmadeva, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhīṣmadeva saw his most exalted grandsons, headed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulations suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly he was the most satisfied man because of Yudhisthira's being enthroned in place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. Text 12. Aho kastam aho nyayam yad yuyam dharma nandana jivitun narhata klistam vipra dharma chutashraya. Bhīṣmadeva said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations. Yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion." Purport: Maharaj Yudhisthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the battle of Kurukshetra. Bhīṣmadeva could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the battle of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. Thus Bhīṣmadeva encouraged Maharaj Yudhisthira to dissipate his despondency. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the principles, one has no cause for despondency. However, trying the circumstances of life. Bhīṣmadeva, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. Okay, thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 13 on Friday. All glories to Śrīpad Om Vishnupad Śrīpad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charja Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Jagat Guru Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. All glories to Arupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees Ki Jai. All glories to the worldwide devotees Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Śrīpad Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Śrīpad Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nishangapali Dham Ki Jai. Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai. Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jai Sham Kund Radhakund Ki Jai. Jai Gir Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Hari 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 Bol.